Hello everybody, my name is Dachi, welcome to the channel, and if you guys are looking for some Overwatch lore and are kind of wondering what the hell happened in Overwatch, I'm going to be starting a little series, so if you guys like it, why not subscribe, keep up to date with all Overwatch lore, and well, let's get right into this video. So before we can get properly into the video actually, we do need to talk about what happened to Australia and Junkrat and Roadhog's beautiful home of the Australian outback. Now, the Australian Outback is a harsh and cruel place with death around every corner, and that was before the actual nuke went off. Now, the reason this nuke actually went off is because a bunch of Australians from the Australian Liberation Front decided it was a good idea to sabotage the Omnic core from the Omnic factory. Now, this is straight away after the Omnic crisis, so they have a deep hatred for Omnics. Now, the Australian government thought it was a great idea to give the Omnics a place in Australia and the Outback, which a lot of people really disagreed with, and then the Australian Liberation Front was born. Joining this Australian Liberation Front was Roadhog, by the way, but we'll get into the story a little bit more later. Now, this nuclear explosion completely devastated the wasteland, and well, it became even more of a wasteland. A small while after the nuclear explosion actually went off, they started building Junkertown. Now, Junkertown is the home of Junkrat and the Junker Queen, but we'll get into the Junker Queen some other time. Now, Junkrat was actually brought up in Junkertown, and he was originally brought up as a full-on Junker, scrapping everything he could find from Omnic parts to buildings, and even the Omnic factory itself. Now, actually, when he was exploring this factory, he found a big treasure, and everyone wanted a piece of it because somehow some people started hearing about it. But let's get into Roadhog's story, because Roadhog's story actually ties into Junkrat's at this point. This is also where the comic starts off, Wasteland. Now, Roadhog's story actually starts in the Outback. Now, a bunch of Junkers are trying to scrap an old shed for parts and everything around it. As some of the other Junkers start celebrating, one of them is a bit fearful and tells the others to shut up. Some of the other Junkers basically blow it off and just be like, "It's alright, I have a loaded gun, what's gonna happen anyway?" This doesn't really reassure the fearful Junker. The fearful Junker also goes to explain that they shouldn't wake the hog, or otherwise, they're dead. Roadhog doesn't hesitate and fires immediately. The other Junker is trying to fire back, but gets hooked immediately. We all know that feeling. The Junker immediately starts pleading for his life, even telling him that he can have his lucky gun, Ducky. Surprisingly, Roadhog actually releases him and thinks to himself, the world deserves people like this. Roadhog thinks to himself that they could scrap every single panel that's here, but that wouldn't get them any closer to a proper city. After this, he starts heading towards Junkertown, where he's planning to sell all the scraps that he just got from those Junkers. Roadhog gets told by the guard not to carry any guns into the city because the Queen has not given him permission yet. As Roadhog starts going for Junkertown, he realizes how much he really hates this place. They fought to protect their home, but they got an apocalypse instead. And the rest of them are all fighting for ashes. I love this little thing about Roadhog where he actually thinks more than he actually talks, just showing his character being a bit more, well, cool in my opinion. Roadhog really doesn't like the people in Junkertown, and well, it kinda goes to show. With a few exceptions. Bruce is an old friend of Roadhog's. Now, Bruce used to be an engineer, but now, just like everyone else, he is wasting away. Roadhog actually gives him a bit of scrap to pay for some of those canisters that he uses in-game to heal himself. So if you ever get pissed off at a Roadhog just healing himself at 1 HP, blame Bruce. Bruce tells Roadhog just to leave the scraps and keep the coins for old time's sake. Bruce also tells Roadhog that the world's trying to forget about us, and that they want us to stay quiet. He tells him, don't give him dissatisfaction. With the coins Roadhog's got left over, he starts heading towards one of the local bars in Junkertown. As soon as Roadhog enters this fine drinking establishment, he hears people threatening someone about something that he knows. Now, Roadhog doesn't actually give a crap about this and immediately starts going towards the bar to grab a drink. As it turns out, this person that they're threatening is Junkrat. Now, Junkrat's in a bit of a pickle at the moment because he has a vast treasure that nobody's supposed to know about, but somehow, being Junkrat, everyone knows about it. Junkrat claims he has no clue what the hell they're talking about, and basically tries to blow it off and says there's no problems here at all, what are you talking about? The other Junkers are having none of it and starting to threaten him with his life. Junkrat proceeds to say he has no idea what they're talking about again, and then says, if I did, I would only share it with a friend, and I would give him 10%, as he points at Roadhog. Roadhog, having no clue what the hell he's talking about, just sort of shrugs it off for a second. One of the other Junkers starts walking up to Roadhog and actually starts talking crap a little bit. Now, Roadhog doesn't really care too much about this at first, But then he starts hearing Junkrat telling him, 20%? 25%! This piques Roadhog's interest a little bit, but what really sets him off is when the Junker actually tells him not to interfere or they're going to make a little piggy squeal. Roadhog smashes the mug of beer that he's holding and immediately starts destroying everyone in the bar. After the fight, Junkrat says, "I knew you were the upstanding sort," while Roadhog thinks to himself, "Idiot." Then Junkrat immediately tries to undercut him with a 10% deal, but Roadhog just says 50. Junkrat's still trying to undercut him, basically tells him, "Well, what about 25%? 28%? Alright, 50 is my final offer." Roadhog starts thinking to himself, he's a liar, he lies to himself more than anything, he's not the quiet type, the world deserves us both, and we'll make sure they don't forget it. Shortly after this comic, Junkrat and Roadhog actually get kicked out of Junkertown because of the beatdown at the bar, destroying the Queen's summer shack, and some other terrible things that they did to the Queen. Luckily for Roadhog, Junkrat immediately comes up with a great idea with the two best things in the world.
Money and explosives. I've got an idea!
Straight after this, they start terrorizing the entire world, going on a massive rampage, getting as much money as they can, doing any job they can. Doesn't matter how big or how small it is, just so they can get their giant fortune and get back at the Queen. This actually includes breaking into the Palace of England and stealing all the crown jewels. It also includes a lot smaller stuff like literally stealing ice cream and also robbing an arcade. At one point, Junkrat and Roadhog actually get approached by someone that actually tells them they have a proper job for them to save some hostages and take out some bots. And Junkrat and Roadhog are more than happy to actually oblige with this. This is where our second comic starts off. Now the comic starts off in Sydney, Australia. Now I know what you might be thinking, well, Australia is supposed to look like a wasteland, but no, it's actually only the outback that is turned into a complete wasteland. So there is some normal civilization technically still in Australia. Anyway, this man explains that there's a bunch of hostages that he wants to free and also get rid of some Omnek terrorists. He also states that he doesn't want the police to be involved because supposedly they have better things to do. Junkrat actually acting a little bit surprised about this because it's technically a legit job for him. And also that they are actually getting paid for it. The man also actually told Junkrat to make sure it stays quiet, and he heard that Junkrat and Roadhog are the best people for keeping things quiet. And because Junkrat really just wants the money, he just says, yeah, you called the right people. Later that same night, Junkrat and Roadhog go to the building where they're supposed to be and start rigging the place up with explosives. Cause you know, that's the way to keep it quiet. While they're doing this, Junkrat starts saying that, not all suits are bad, are they? While Junkrat and Roadhog are rigging the entire building with explosives, a whole bunch of people are looking at them and thinking to themselves, well, this isn't supposed to be right, and a lot of them start calling the cops. Except for this guy. This guy just seems like he's enjoying what's happening. Once they reach the roof, they actually plant even more explosives to blow a hole into the roof and start freeing the hostages and scrapping some bots. Junkrat immediately jumps in and yells out, "I'm coming for you, scrapheads," announcing his presence pretty damn clearly. Junkrat didn't realize, however, that there is no second story or top story at all, so he falls straight down to the ground. Luckily for him, Overwatch doesn't have fall damage. As soon as Junkrat starts getting up, he immediately gets ambushed by a bot. But luckily for him, Roadhog is overweight and crushes him immediately with his body weight. Junkrat immediately starts complaining and saying, "If that was the only bot around, I'll be very upset." But before he could even finish his sentence properly, they are surrounded by Omneks. Roadhog immediately starts grabbing some scrap, and Junkrat just smiles. In the midst of the chaos, Junkrat says, "Let's settle this fast, we're professionals now," and blows a hole into the wall. As soon as they get outside, Junkrat says, "Don't keep the client waiting," and presses the button to blow up the entire building. Great job with the stealth mission, guys. After blowing up the entire place, Junkrat just calls it beautiful, and then realizes, alright, there's hostages. Junkrat starts thinking about what just happened, because, well, he didn't hear any screams, so he didn't think there were any hostages there. Maybe they already got out. Well, very strange to him. But what he starts to realize is that these aren't Omneks at all, they're just normal drones. Junkrat starts to get a little bit confused, because they're there to destroy some Omneks, but before he could actually figure anything out, the cops show up. Junkrat throws his hands up in the air and tries to convince the cops that he's on their side and that he's a professional just like them. Junkrat hasn't realized yet that he has actually been set up by the suit. The cops try to arrest him, but before they can actually finish their sentence, Junkrat starts yelling at the officers because one of the officers called Roadhog fat. Roadhog pulls Junkrat away just before he gets shot. Junkrat continuously screams at the cops until Roadhog sort of tells him that they have been set up. As soon as Junkrat realizes this, they try to escape. As it turns out, the guy from the beginning actually set them up and just needed the insurance money for the building. As he's in the middle of a conversation with someone on the phone talking about the insurance money, Roadhog hooks him from behind and pulls him straight through the window. I am kind of curious how Roadhog managed to hook through the window before actually breaking it, but you know, the hook used to be broken, so that's probably why. Junkrat quickly tells the suit that they could have had a good thing going here, and then starts ziplining away. And in the next few shots, you see a bunch of explosives hanging around the building, and then the building just goes. After one massive world heist spree later, they end up having a giant payload filled with gold. And also this little plushy thing right here. With this beautiful vast treasure that they have, they're planning to trick the queen into letting them inside, and then they're going to blow the queen to smithereens. But the queen's not going to let them in knowing it's Junkrat and Roadhog, so they come up with the ingenious plan of getting a disguise. After a few brainstorm sessions, they finally come up with a proper plan and actually get in there and get out with the gold again. They proceed to knock on the door and then immediately get asked who is it. Junkrat jumps out immediately and says,
Junkrat and Roadhog!
Oi, hit the road, mate!
Well, that's about everything for Junkrat and Roadhog right now. I'm going to be covering a lot more of the other characters in the game as well, like Reaper for example, Soldier 76, McCree, and well, a whole bunch more. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, maybe leave a like, and well, I'll catch you guys later. Bye!